Hey guys, welcome to Wednesday's edition of Full Count. I am Jeff Michaels. Some of you may know me better as JM Sports, but I'll be hosting today's edition of Full Count. I want to say thank you for joining us, and I do want to give a special shout out to everybody that jumped on $2 Tuesday yesterday, cashing in on another big winner, putting myself up in the leaderboards for the recent days in the MLB. But everybody on today's panel is familiar with winning in the long term and winning in the MLB recently. We got Jesse Schule, who's seemingly always bringing in the winners, and he's up in the last 3 days on the diamond, as well as Ron Cabang, a familiar face to the leaderboards, and bringing in the money in the last 7 days. Welcome to the show today, guys. Some familiar faces joining me as in the last week or so, but I'm obviously not complaining. Always a pleasure to spend the afternoon with you guys. Ronald, how you doing today?
Good, man. This is the third full count show I did this week. So Monday 3-0. Yesterday I think I went 2-1. So hopefully we can keep the run going here on the show for you guys.
Yeah, we had a heck of a run for you. We had a good day there on Monday too with you. I wasn't with you yesterday, but Jesse, good to have you too. How are you doing today?
Good to be here. I guess I owe Ronald a beer for filling in for me yesterday. Thanks for that, Ronald.
No problem, man.
But guys, these are just two of the guys you can find over on the SportsMemo site. You may have seen it scrolling across the bottom, but if you haven't, you have now. But just for a few more days, SportsMemo's running 50% off of all packages over $25. And that runs through the end of July. So don't miss the opportunity to cash in on those winning plays from Jesse, Ron, myself, and plenty of the other options on one of the best collections of handicappers over at SportsMemo. But guys, let's get started on the roundtable games for today. In game one, we head over to the Great American Ballpark in Cincinnati as the Marlins take on the Reds. And Cincinnati comes into this game as a relatively surprising minus 145 favorite. And after the 1-2 loss yesterday, the Marlins improved to a 46-51 record. They take on the Reds that sit at just 37-59. Miami's got Braxton Garrett on the mound, his 10th start this year. He's just 2-3 with a 3.42 ERA, but the team's over 500 with a 5-4 record in his 9 starts. Cincinnati's got Luis Castillo on the mound at home. He's just 3-4 on the season, but he's put up an impressive 2.77 ERA, and Cincinnati is 7-6 in his 13 starts this year. And they've walked away with a win in 4 consecutive outings. Those 4 starts, he's gone 6 or more innings in all of them, and he's allowed 1 or less run in all 4 as well, taking down the Yankees in New York, Tampa Bay, Atlanta, and Chicago behind a 1.0 ERA. Cincinnati's been the hotter team record-wise at 500 in the last 10 games, but they put him in last place in the NL Central, 16 games back of the Brewers, while Miami's 14 games back of the Mets in the NL East. Well, let's see what Ron has to say about this one and get things going with the first game of the day. Ron, over to you, man.
Yeah, real quick, shout out to the chat. I see my guy Mitch. He says, Cabang, I beat you here. He just came from my show that I just did right before this, and he showed up here already. But yeah, Marlins and Reds. We got, like you said, Garrett and Castillo on the mound in this one. Both are having pretty solid seasons and are trending to the under. But I'm expecting some regression from both of these guys after both these pitchers have been absolutely killing it their last 3 games respectively. The bats for both of these teams are putting up solid numbers in these exact spots too. Marlins are hitting 231 on the road against the righties, but are averaging 4.5 runs in those spots. That's 1.7 runs more than they do against lefties on the road. Reds at home are crushing lefties this season, hitting 278, averaging 5.71 runs per game in those spots. Another interesting note here is in the third game of the series, both teams actually trend towards the over in those spots as well. Marlins 18-7 this season in game 3 of series, and Reds are 15-10. With all that said, the total opened at 8, and we're now seeing some 8.5s. I agree with the line movement here. I think the over is the way to go. More specifically, though, the Reds team total, I think, is the one that really is going to drive this over. So I think you can get the team total for the Reds at 4.5 at minus 105. That would be the way that I go here.
Yeah, sounds like a good one. The way they've been putting up runs. I saw looking at their numbers as a home favorite against lefties. The Reds have put up 11 runs, 14 runs, and 7 runs in the last 3 outings. Yeah. But let's see, Jesse, what do you got to add to this one for us?
Well, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but just recently out of the Miami media, they've said that the Marlins are basically ready for a fire sale. Everybody's available except for Sandy Alcantara. And, they've lost 6 of their last 9. Morale is not high in Miami. They did split the first 2 games here in Cincinnati, but the Reds turned to their ace in the rubber match, Luis Castillo, as you guys talked about. He's having a decent season, especially lately. He's 1-0 with a 1.00 ERA in his last 4 starts. You got Braxton Garrett going for Miami, and at first glance, I mean, he looks like he's been pretty hot lately. In his last 2 starts, he allowed 1 run on 4 hits, striking out 18 in 12 innings pitched. But when you look at who he was pitching against in those last 2 starts, it was back-to-back wins over the Pittsburgh Pirates, and a lot of pitchers look good against the Pittsburgh Pirates. So maybe Braxton Garrett isn't all he's hyped up to be based on those recent performances. Miami has lost 4 of their last, they are 4-12 in their last 16 versus the Reds, and they've lost 6 of their last 7 when coming off a win. The Reds are 9-4 in their last 13 overall. Cincinnati's playing better ball, and with Luis Castillo on the mound, I feel comfortable backing Cincinnati tonight.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Jesse. I was going to say, too, Castillo, 5 starts against Miami, too, 4-0 with a 1.73 ERA. So he's got some history against them, and they've struggled as a dog. So I can't argue either one of those for you guys. But over to game 2, we got Battle in New York tonight. It's an exciting one. This is just the 8th time this season that the Yankees come into a game as an underdog. They may not be accustomed to it, but their 4-3 record is the best win percentage as an underdog in the MLB. Not to mention, it's the first time since August 15th of 2021 that they've been a dog of 160 or more. They currently find themselves at plus 165 against Max Scherzer in the Mets tonight. Scherzer comes into the game 6-2 behind a 2.28 ERA, resulting in 8 wins in his 12 starts for the Mets. But he's 3-1 at home. But is that enough to help him take down the Yankees, seeing as his team's lost 4 consecutive starts against the Yankees, and he's allowed 4 or more runs in 2 of those 3 starts? But as for the Yankees, Domingo Germán set to make just his 2nd start of the season. In his first outing against Houston, he allowed 5 earned runs on 6 hits in just 3 innings pitched, giving up 2 home runs and taking the loss against the Astros. This one doesn't exactly get easier. Both teams find themselves in first place in their division, and they both find themselves on a short list of 60-win teams at this point on the year. They're playing 2 different styles of ball. Yankees lead considerably in runs, home runs, and RBIs, but the Mets hold the edge in batting average and hits. Let's see what Jesse has to say about the battle in New York tonight.
Well, Jeff, I like what you had to say there. I mean, you covered a lot of ground for sure. The Yankees obviously are used to being the favorite, but tonight we see the Mets, the big favorite, with Scherzer on the mound, but big price too, minus 180 for Scherzer against the Yankees, a team that he has a career record of 4-4 with a 3.93 ERA against in 9 career starts. I wouldn't feel comfortable at all taking the Mets at that price, even though the starter for the Yankees tonight, Germán, he did get rocked, giving up 5 runs on 6 hits with 2 home runs in just 3 innings in his season debut versus Houston. I actually had the Yankees in that game, so I did a little bit of digging about Germán in the minors and his recent starts in AAA, and he sort of came in looking decent. And one bad start against a great team like Houston, I'm not really ready to go to the bank on the fact that this guy's going to get rocked again. And even if he does, the Yankees bats have the power to keep them in this game. But given the price, I don't like the side in this game. I'm looking at the total. The Yankees have gone over in 6 straight at Queens, New York. The over is 14-3 in the Yanks' last 17 overall. Given Scherzer's struggles against the Yankees lineup and Germán struggling in his debut, the total looks a little low here to me. I'd go over the 7.
I like it, Jesse. Yeah, I was surprised. Almost 7.4 runs for the Mets in the last 8 games against the Yankees. So they're putting up numbers against a good team. Ron, what about you? What are you thinking for the New York matchup tonight?
Yeah, I'm pretty much in a similar situation there. Herman got touched up in that first game, like you said. The numbers that he put up was 5 runs, 2 home runs in 3 innings. I mean, that's not something that you want to really back in this spot, even though it's his second start. Off of a long layoff. Scherzer, he's been pretty much the dominant the dominant pitcher he's been for the most part. From a pitching perspective, you could just see that the Mets have the advantage by a huge margin. In this spot specifically, the Mets are 25, 4-10 on the first 5 money line, 27-12 on the full game money line as home favorites. And but I wanted to dive deeper into the total specifically because, like what Jesse said, right? The Yankees, they have the power and they have the bats to overcome this type of trend. And but what I wanted to focus on is just being able having the Mets be able to put up some runs against Herman in only his second start. They're asking them to just score 2.5 in that first 5 at plus 120. I think you can get that number at plus money here against a pitcher who's struggling, who struggled in his first outing. I think that's something that we could probably back here, regardless of whether or not, the Yankees win or the Mets win. We focus on what we think is possible. And I definitely think that 3 runs early against Herman is definitely doable here. So I would take the Mets over 2.5 runs.
I like that one, Ron. Like I said, I just mentioned it. Their history against the Yankees have been impressive recently. And Herman, I was surprised to see he's lost 4 straight starts against teams over 500. So we got another one of those against the list. So maybe it wasn't just Houston. But third game of the round table, guys, looking at a wild card matchup, and it's an exciting one on both sides. Toronto's now won 7 straight games dating back to July 15th. And that's basically this is the first time they've been this big of a favorite against teams over 500. Sure, we'll hear a little more about why as we go on, but you negate the game from April 17th when they played a 5-4 Oakland team, and they're currently minus 250 against a St. Louis team that's over 500, and there are some places that still have them as high as minus 265. St. Louis goes into this game in Canada without 2 of their stars, but they do have Adam Wainwright on the mound for this one. 3.40 ERA in 19 starts on the year. And the team's over 500, going 10-9 in those 19 outings. And although the Cardinals have lost 4 straight Wainwright outings behind his 4.62 ERA, he gave one of his worst starts in the last 2 years against Cincinnati just 5 days ago, allowing 7 earned runs in just over 5 innings. But Toronto's won 9 out of the last 10 after losing 9 out of the last 10 prior to that. This has put Toronto in second place in the AL East, and they're ahead of Tampa Bay now. They sit atop the wild card, they're a game and a half ahead of Seattle in the wild card American League standings. And St. Louis doesn't really give off the sense with this line that they're in second place in the NL Central and just 3 games back of Milwaukee. But they currently sit at 51-47, and they're only a few games worse than Toronto, but they find themselves in the wild card hunt in the National League as well. Ron, I know you may have an eye on these wild card standings. What are your thoughts on this interleague matchup here with these wild cards?
Yeah, I want my Mariners to make it this year. Julio coming back, and that was super helpful. And hopefully the Mariners can get on a run here to close out the season. But just looking at this one, I want to focus on that first 5 specifically. And I'm looking towards the over on this one, over 4 at minus 115. You mentioned, Wainwright and Gausman. You mentioned, the issue that the Cardinals have with playing in Toronto as well, with some of the players not being able to go over there. But what I wanted to mention was the Jays against righties at home. They're averaging 5.3 runs versus righties at home versus 3.36 versus lefties at home. That's a significant difference right there. On the other side, the Cards hit righties much better than they do against lefties on the road as well. So for me, when I look at the total on the first 5 in the full game, I want to see who's the home team and who I feel like is going to win that game. And on this one, I think the Jays, I feel like they're going to be able to win this one outright. And if you want to take the over, you want to have that extra half inning in the 9th, and I'm not going to get that. So I want to focus on that first 5 innings and just take the over 4 there for first 5.
I like that. With the success that they've had of late, of course. Jesse, what do you got on these wild card ones?
Well, like you guys mentioned, the price really stands out here with Toronto being favored by minus 250. the first glance here, I was looking at St. Louis thinking Adam Wainwright on the mound. Geez, give me the underdog. But, let's look at some things first here. The Jays have won 7 straight. They've averaged roughly 10 runs per game during that winning streak. And as good as Wainwright has been this season, he's having a fantastic season for a guy my age. I mean, his age. But he hasn't been great on the road. He's 3-5 with a 4.81 ERA on the road. When you compare those with his home stats, it's a little bit shocking. And then you got Gausman going for Toronto. He allowed 3 runs on 7 hits, striking out 10 in 5 innings in his last start, which was a 28-5 win at Boston. He's 2-1 with a 2.25 ERA in his last 4 starts. And the Cardinals have lost 7 of their last 8 against American League teams. The Blue Jays, on the other hand, are 17-5 in their last 22 home games in interleague play. And with Goldschmidt and Arenado not in the lineup, this Cardinals lineup is not good enough without those 2 guys to even consider taking the dog. So while my first reaction here was maybe let's take St. Louis plus the runs, I think I'm going to go the other way. Take Toronto minus the 1.5 with Wainwright struggling on the road and St. Louis missing those big bats.
I like it. I won't give too much of my personal opinion, as you'll hear me talk about this game a little bit more in that best bet segment. But Jesse, I do have to ask your firsthand knowledge a little bit more. But these COVID restrictions up in Canada, do they hold an advantage for this Toronto team? And I mean, looking forward to the playoffs, do you think personally that it's something that could sway the outcome of this season for a team that's fighting for the playoffs?
Well, I mean, you hear a lot about it in the news lately, and not just in Major League Baseball, but tennis and the NFL and hockey. And who knows if it stays the way it is now, it certainly would be an advantage to Toronto because all their players are going to be evading any restrictions. There's no Toronto Blue Jays players that are facing restrictions. And if their opponents can't bring their big bats to Toronto in a 7-game series, that's going to be a big advantage.
Yeah, I seem to find myself agreeing with you. I mean, they're 31-19 at home already this year, straight up. So who knows if that has something to do with it. But after roundtable games, guys, moment everybody always looks forward to, we got our best bet section for today's show. And these guys may tell you about what they got over on the premium site as well. But I am going to take the reins here first and get us started with today's action. Over on the premium site, I do have a 2-for-1 package up, and it is still part of that 50% off pack. And I have topped the leaderboards in the last 3, 7, and 30 days in profit in the MLB over at SportsMemo, up nearly 25 units in just the last 7 days in the MLB action. So go check that out. Got my eye on some big ones coming in the coming days too. But for today's best bet, I'm looking at that game we just talked about, that St. Louis Cardinals game, or St. Louis Cardinals and Toronto Blue Jays going over that 8 total. I mean, both these pitchers are talented and they have showed obvious potential in their years in the league, but that hasn't stopped them from going over the total this year. Wainwright's gone over in 6 of his last 8 starts, thanks to 5 or more runs of support in those 6 starts that went over. And I think this will be the situation again that'll give him that kind of support. Toronto's been the hottest team in baseball in the last 10 games with their 9-1 record, but also in the sense that they're putting up an impressive 8.1 runs per game. And we know they had that 28-run performance, but even when you take that out, they're still putting up nearly 6 runs per game in the other 9 outings in the last 10. And they've gone over the total in 5 out of their last 7 games overall. Blue Jays are 19-9 over under against teams that are winning by a half run or more on the year. And they're 30-17 over under against teams over 500, combining for nearly 10 runs. And they're hitting .277 at home, combining for 9.4 runs with the opponent, leading to a 28-21 over under record at home. But while it comes on the other side, Gausman has frequented the over as well in situations like this. His team's gone over in 17 of his last 24 starts against teams over 500 in the last 2 years. And he's gone over in his 4 career starts against the Cardinals. Meanwhile, the Cardinals have gone over in 7 of their last 10, and they're 11-5 over-under in interleague play, while also posting a 17-8 over-under record in the last 25 games against right-handed pitchers with an ERA under 3.5. So I see Toronto putting up some runs in this game, and St. Louis still has some weapons. Even with their 2 biggest bats out, they have the potential to put up a couple to help this total too. So I like that St. Louis-Tampa Bay game over that 8. But let's head over to the other guys, see what they got for their best bets and on the other site. Ron, why don't you go first? Tell us what you got going on tonight.
Yeah, as far as like premium plays, I don't have anything posted yet. This is about the time that I do post my premium plays. So those will be up after the show. But as far as the best bet for today's show, I'm going to go with the Reds team total over 4.5. I've been looking at this one since I did the show earlier on Let's Cap. And I think, I just looking at, a little bit of the numbers that are coming afterwards and some of the trends that I'm looking at, it just points me towards the Reds kind of driving this one over and focusing on them specifically, just in case, the Marlins don't put up the numbers needed to go on the full game over. Just going to focus on that team total and just take them over 4.5.
I like it. We talked earlier about the left-handed numbers, so I like what you're thinking. Jesse, Dog Days of Summer continues. Why don't you tell us what you got going on tonight and in the future ahead?
Well, my baseball game is probably already started, so let's not talk about that. But the big news is CFL 10-3, my last 13 CFL. I do have a game of the week going off this week on Saturday, so you can get that at SportsMemo. But best bets, let's talk about best bets. And my friend Tony Mejia, you guys may know him. He said on Twitter during the All-Star break that he was tempted to bet against the Orioles in every game in the second half of the season. And I think where Tony was going with that is the Orioles went on a big run heading into the All-Star break. They sort of surprised people. And I guess a lot of people have a lot of reason to be skeptical that success can continue. And I replied to Tony saying, I might be more inclined to take the Orioles plus the runs in every game for the rest of the season. But really what it's going to depend on is the bookmakers and how they react to the Orioles winning streak. And is the public actually going to become a believer? And, when are we going to see the bookmakers influenced by that? And when I look at today's game, I think it's a fine example of what Tony was looking for. And the Orioles have become overvalued, in my opinion, because they've won back-to-back games versus Tampa Bay. Game 3 is a pick'em. And I don't expect the Rays to be swept by the Orioles here. If I look at the pitching matchup, you got Tyler Wells going for Baltimore. He's allowed 8 runs on 11 hits in 10 2/3 innings in his last 2 starts. One of those was against Tampa. You got Drew Rasmussen going for Tampa Bay. He's 1-0 with a 2.29 ERA in his last 4 starts. And the Rays, they have been struggling a bit lately, but they are still 11-4 in their last 15 versus the American League East. They're still very much alive in the wild card. And like I said, I just don't like them to be swept here. I like the Rays with, perhaps an advantageous pitching matchup and the price. Give me Tampa Bay here.
I like it. That seems like we're going to have a lot of question marks coming out of that division in baseball as we move ahead through the rest of the second half of the year. So some exciting action to be had. Guys, want to thank you for joining us too. Don't forget, you see it right below me. I know we talked about hitting that goal, but we're still looking to get those subscribers up, and we're looking to hit that 10K number. And below that, we still got deals going on SportsMemo. 50% all those packages, 50% off, all of those packages, $25 or over for the rest of the month. Plenty of big, good options out there to jump on, cash in some winners as we move forward here in the second half of the MLB season. But thank you for joining us today, guys. On behalf of myself, Jesse, Ronald, we want to say thank you for watching and go win some money on your Wednesday today, guys. Have a good one.